Hello and welcome to Biz Daily. I'm Jon Jordan. So the big news today is that GREE, the Japanese mobile publisher, has announced it's setting up 2 new offices. So one of those is in Germany, in Berlin, and one is in Australia, in Melbourne. So the reason that's kind of interesting is that last week the big news was GREE had laid off over 100 people from its main San Francisco office. So obviously the two things are kind of linked. It's kind of GREE has now kind of announced it has this kind of strategic kind of change in its international operations. One of those is to focus more on Europe. So it's not particularly focused on Europe in the past, and not been very successful in Europe, perhaps for that reason. So it's opening a new office in Berlin, and that office isn't going to be doing game development. That office is going to be doing kind of important live operations and support and QA and localization and community support and user acquisition, and these kind of like things that might seem quite soft services, but actually very important if you want to run a successful free-to-play mobile game. So you need local people kind of running those events, maybe different events in Europe to events run in the States and maybe even in Japan. So companies are really focusing on that, and GREE has now said that it's one of its 4 key changes to its kind of strategy. It wants to focus much more on Europe, because Europe is a fairly lucrative market. I mean, it's very competitive, obviously, but it is still a good market to be operating in. And Berlin is a very good place. So there are some game developers there. I guess Wuger is the most famous. There's also Game Dual aerial games as well. But Berlin, where Berlin's really been good in the past, is for mobile internet companies and mobile monetization companies. And in fact, the guy who's heading up the Berlin office for GREE comes from Fiber, which is a mobile monetization company. So presumably that's how they're going to be starting that up. Maybe a big game development studio in the future, but at the moment they're going to just focus on monetization. The Melbourne office is pretty different actually. So that's an acquisition of an existing mobile game developer. And who are called Twitch with a double I. So they're best known for kind of hardcore or mid-core, I suppose, strategy game called Heroes of War that was published by Nexon, which is a Korean publisher. Wasn't particularly successful, but it's what GREE's hoping is those guys, or what it likes about that company, was it likes their technology. So GREE hasn't particularly made a lot of kind of games that would appeal maybe to the Western market. In Japan it's a bit more kind of card battlers and 2D and kind of menu based stuff, and that doesn't really work so well in the West. So what seems to be happening with GREE is they kind of want to get some games up for the Western market, a bit more kind of 3D, bit more kind of better graphics. And actually one of its strategic focuses now is to focus on kind of on technology, innovating technology. So I think we'll be seeing a lot from that team in terms of kind of getting some good looking games out for the kind of Australian, US kind of Western markets, which, you know, a bit more focused on maybe gameplay than the Asian markets. A bit more focused on maybe kind of collection, kind of mechanics and metagame. I guess the other kind of interesting thing about the move is what you're seeing is kind of GREE looking to kind of work in places a bit less expensive. So San Francisco is a great place to operate an office if you're very profitable, and if you're having games that are profitable, because you can bring in great talent and kind of grow that business. But if you're having games that aren't profitable, which is currently GREE's situation for a lot of the games, then obviously it makes sense to kind of take people out of the kind of high value, expensive locations and kind of start moving them, or start hiring people in other locations that are maybe less expensive. And I guess that's kind of when you're running a big global company, that's kind of the problem you have, that you have people, you know, GREE's many thousand people working for them, and you kind of need, sometimes you have people in the wrong place and people working on the wrong project, and it's hard to kind of shut them down. But whenever you're shutting something down, you're probably starting up something kind of somewhere else. So that's the kind of swings and roundabouts of mobile game development at the moment. Gives us lots of things to write about, so I guess that's a small kind of benefit for us at least. Anyways, that's the news today. There'll be more news tomorrow, I'm sure, so come back and find out what it is. We'll see you then.